Hello and welcome back to another episode of One Kick from Glory. It's a World Cup edition. There's been some exciting games in Qatar with all the controversy put to one side. It's been nice to have a really good World Cup, and this might actually rank as one of the best ones we've had in a very long time. I'm joined by a special guest, friend of the pod, Markus. Good to have you with us. How you doing today, bro?
Hey, good to be here. Yeah, doing good. Looking forward to this one.
So today we want to kind of focus on, the excitement of the World Cup, but mainly looking at players that might be on the move. It's always known that every tournament brings up one or two players that get their dream move to their dream club. One such example a few years back was James Rodriguez, who, lit up the World Cup in 2014 for Colombia, went on to have an incredible, transfers here, there and everywhere. But for you, Marcus, I think just looking at the World Cup so far, is there any player in particular that really stands out to you as one that you think is probably on the cusp of that next big move?
That's a good question. I think, when you said James Rodriguez there, I actually thought you was going to talk about Salif Diao, who got his, big dream move to Liverpool after beating France back in, the World Cup there with Senegal and, El Hadj Diouf and, all them guys. But,
True.
I think, Gakpo, the Netherlands looks good, has had a good tournament, is doing a good job, and someone that I think is performing at a level where you'd kind of think, he's probably going to be due a move out of Holland to one of the Europe's major leagues at some point soon. So he'd be one that I'd kind of have my eye on.
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of the hot ones that a lot of people will be looking at to see where he goes next and what his next move would be. Obviously, there's a lot of talk of Manchester United being a club that are strongly linked to him, very interested. Would you recommend that move for him, or would you think that he could probably go to a different club instead?
Personally, I wouldn't go to Man United, but I'm a Liverpool fan, so take that with a pinch of salt if you want to. But yeah, I think. You look at United, they have Sancho, they have Rashford, he goes there, they signed Anthony recently for a lot of money, he goes there, he's just another player in the big competition for a spot in that team, whereas, I think if you think about the likes of Arsenal, for example, Martinelli is obviously having a great season, and there's not much competition. Smith Rowe when he comes back, but again, another player that could play as a 10. So, if I was Arsenal, I'd probably be looking to, see what his agent's saying and how much he's looking for and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that shout. I think going to Manchester United this season, they're too much in transition. They need to kind of get through this period of Ten Hag settling what he wants to do. We know they've had the Ronaldo fallout or success, depending on how you look at it, his departure. But I still think they need to work out some other things before they start looking at adding on these key pieces. And also for him, you'd have to accept that you go into a club that is really on, it's a bigger build project, and it might take them another season. But we say that, but they have the money, so they could surprise us all. But I think it wouldn't be the wisest move to make to go to Manchester United at this point in time. Not for me.
I would agree.
Not for me at all. But I think another player that there's a lot of talk about, one which I think, depending on what the clubs do, there might be a lot of interest and a lot of crazy bids coming up this summer, is of course Jude Bellingham. Starred for England in midfield in the World Cup. Obviously had an unfortunate game against France where I think just a bit of... We got done by Southgateism, and we're going to have a separate podcast about that one. But I think he's definitely looks like one that's ready for that next big step. I mean, at Borussia Dortmund, that's a massive move, him being there from Birmingham City. The fact that he's already seen such a key player for them, it's really interesting that his squad number at Dortmund, when you add up all the numbers, it's 8. Was it 8, 6, and a 4 altogether to get to his squad number? I think it's 8, 10... and a 4, 22. So that kind of shows you how he views himself as a player, and it's justified in how he plays because he can do it all as a midfielder. For you, now I know Liverpool's a big link. I'm not going to ask you where else you'd like him to go, but I'd put it this way: in terms of him joining Liverpool, like, how would he fit into your system?
Yeah, look, Jude Bellingham, in my opinion, and I have raved about him on this podcast in times past, but I stand by the fact that Jude Bellingham has all the potential to be the greatest midfielder of all time. I think he is unbelievable. He scores goals, he's athletic, he's tall, he controls the midfield, he's aggressive, he's even relatively fast, he's tricky, he gets himself in the right places, he is all in all definition complete midfielder. And I think when you ask the question, where does Jude Bellingham fit in Liverpool's midfield, it really is the same answer for any football club in the world. Jude Bellingham doesn't fit in your midfield. Jude Bellingham dominates your midfield. Like, he becomes the key component that you build your midfield around. And if you look at Liverpool with the likes of their midfield of, Henderson aging, Milner aging, Naby Keita not quite became the player that was expected. Curtis Jones not quite good enough. Like, you're looking at a list of midfielders that don't. Henderson has done a great job for Liverpool in his time and has captained Liverpool and led Liverpool to all the success that they've had. But from an underrated place,
Of course.
Jude Bellingham would be that piece of the Liverpool puzzle in midfield that would change the game. Now, I obviously think that Liverpool is the best move for him. I'm a little biased. I think, if he comes to England, Liverpool would be the most enticing prospect. I don't think it's likely Man City would spend that type of money on a midfielder. I think Chelsea would compete and are an interesting option because of their kind of young English model that they're kind of building, with the likes of, Reece James and the guy they signed from Aston Villa, whose name is
Akani Chukwuemi.
Mason Mount. They've got this nice little kind of English approach that they're building, and he would be an excellent coup for them. I just don't think that Chelsea would be the move that I would take if I was in his spot. Liverpool are more established. Liverpool have had more success more recently. Liverpool will probably be better positioned to develop him and move him forward. Potter's an excellent coach, but Chelsea also have had a habit of maintaining coaches for no longer than 18 months. Whereas Klopp's been in charge of Liverpool for a consistent period of time. The evidence would suggest that Liverpool would hire another manager for another consistent period of time. The only other spanner in the works of all of that would be Real Madrid.
I'd take him at Arsenal. I'd throw the kitchen sink at him at Arsenal.
Go on and win the league this year, and who knows?
I think that's a good point you made. Both Arsenal going on to win the league, but and also Real Madrid being like a major competitor for that signing, because we know how well they are at identifying young talents. We've seen that with Tchouaméni right now, who's bossing it in midfield for France, and also for them, of course, their signings in prior seasons of Rodrigo, and prior seasons to that, Vinicius Junior, Ferland Mendy. They just know how to pick up young players at the right time. You can even argue centre half Eder Militao as well, who's a bit rash, but they just know what to do and how to get these players in. So I wouldn't be surprised if they present an interesting option for Bellingham. I would look at it and think they don't really need him per se, but at the same time,
but come on,
Modric's,
when have Real Madrid ever needed a player?
True. Modric's probably time for him to be phased out. They've also, with Toni Kroos, it's like they've already kind of started succession planning with those two. Casemiro has been replaced by Tchouaméni, but the other two, Camavinga is he's getting the minutes bit by bit.
Oh, man. Yeah. For me, a midfield of Tchouaméni, Camavinga, and Bellingham would be maybe the greatest midfield of all time, potential.
It would be disgusting. Just wouldn't be fair.
Oh, goodness me, that would be ridiculous. But it would be also just like Real Madrid. And as you talking here on the World Cup, France have took a 1-0 lead against Morocco after 5 minutes. Theo Hernandez.
As you do. And I mean, yeah, actually, let's talk a bit about the World Cup whilst it's on. Morocco have done incredible in getting to this stage. Obviously, the game's nowhere over. Anything can happen. They have shown great resilience. In fact, I think that's the first goal. That's the first goal they've conceded that's been scored by an opposition player all World Cup. The other goal they conceded prior to this was an own goal by their own player. So that just shows you how resilient they are and how tough they are to break down. And they've been quite a good testament to this tournament. And they've been quite entertaining. But looking aside from Morocco across to Argentina, a country which has been the source of many Twitter threads this past few weeks of their history and some things that may or may not have happened in the past. But looking at them on the pitch, I think, does it feel like it's finally going to happen and Messi is going to get his World Cup?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It really does. It's got that feeling about it. Like, Messi has been absolutely exceptional. Like, what is it? 5 goals, 3 assists. Like, he is turning this World Cup inside out on his final World Cup, and it does. It just kind of feels like destiny. And here's me hoping that Morocco can turn this around and beat France, because I'd really like Messi to have the World Cup, and it'd be a lot easier to beat Morocco than France. But that being said, then Morocco would have dismantled of Belgium, Portugal, Spain, and France. So,
and it may prove a harder game, because defensively Morocco are very, very. I mean, obviously they exceeded today, but it was a good goal, well worked. But usually they're very, very solid. So it could make for an interesting contest, but obviously, France are going to do the business. I think we kind of need France to win. Like, I know from my work colleagues, we've been talking about Morocco getting to the final and how good it would be, for Africa, for the Arab world and all that kind of stuff. But you know what, let's just, we need Argentina not to win. I have vested interest against them. I like Messi, but I don't want Argentina to win.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Team Messi all the way here. Like, for me, Messi is the greatest player of all time and will be the greatest player of all time regardless of whether he wins this tournament. But I am just fed up of the debate, and I hope Messi wins the World Cup.
Do you feel like that, irrespective of the final result, obviously, ideally he leads Argentina to glory and they win another World Cup again, but do you think now it's done? Like, there shouldn't be a debate anymore between who's better between him and Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo has done incredible things in football. He will always have his records. He will always be an archetype. And I probably think if you're a young player growing up, I'd think it'd be easier and better to emulate Cristiano than Messi. Like, if you think about it from like a development point of view, it'd be easier to look at Ronaldo's physical development and some of the stuff he does. Okay, I can model that easier than what Messi does, because half the stuff Messi does, you don't even see it. You don't see it, so I don't know how he sees it. So, but I think, ultimately now, it's no debate anymore. Like, Messi is the greatest. And for those who are confused, how would you help to correct their ill fit, their confusion? Because I don't want to say that they're stupid or ignorant, but they're just confused. How would you help the confused ones come over to the facts?
Yeah, look, I don't think that it's an unreasonable thing to say that, that's why there's been such a debate between the two of them for such a long time. But I think when push comes to shove, what Messi has done, goals wise, assists wise, trophies wise, he won 6 trophies in one season. Like, all the trophies available to them, Barcelona won, and Messi was at the center of that. Like, essentially, I just don't think that there is ever been a better player on this planet. And the goals, the types of goals he scores, the ways he scores them, it's just absolutely different class. Now, I also, think that Messi, it's nice that he has that one extra Ballon d'Or.
Sure.
And I think winning the World Cup is important in the process of, trying to put a little bit of distance between them. Like at the end of the day, like, Messi is now, still playing at the peak of his powers at PSG. I know he may leave come this summer, but, he's lighting the greatest tournament in the history of football alive at 35 years old. And, got a combined, I think, is 109 goals and assists in one season.
That's crazy.
It just goes on and on and on. And I think at the core of it, he is just the more magical player. Like Ronaldo has developed himself into an absolutely incredible specimen of a player and has produced incredible things by doing so. But Messi is just magic. And there's something about that magical reality over the guy that worked to get there. In this particular case, I think.
No, I like that. And I think, to me, that kind of how I sum it up and set it between the two of them. I think that, Ronaldo, as I said before, has done incredible stuff in his career. But what Messi's doing right now, and what I find really funny is commentators have clearly not watched Messi play football, because every match of this World Cup, he's just walking around. He's not doing anything. I mean, that is... I actually remember, I don't know who actually explained this part of his game. I don't know if it was like Omri or someone else, but I know a few years ago they were asking this about Messi, that why does it feel like he seems to walk around a lot in games, and that the pundit, whoever it was, said that what he does he uses like the first sort of 5-10 minutes to basically scan the opposition back line and the goalkeeper and work out their patterns and their behaviour. So like what's their favourite foot, how do they pass the ball, how do they receive the ball, how do they shift their body around. And a good case in point with that is the Champions League final against Bayern Munich, where he sat down Boateng. The reason why he was able to score that goal is because from the early in the game, when he was just watching their movements, he realised how stiff Boateng was in his movement, and how stiff he was. So that's why he did that little 1-2 shimmy and dropped him, because he couldn't spin fast enough. And he only knew that because he took the time to watch their movement, analyze what they do. Okay, that's how they move their body. All right, now I'm going to play. And if you think about the goal he scored from the corner when the ball got blocked, when he played a quick 1-2 and then just curled it into low underneath the keeper against was the previous round, not Croatia, the game before. Even that goal, Netherlands, right?
Yeah.
That goal doesn't come unless you study the team and know that they're not going to press you with intensity and they're not going to come to the ball quickly. So people need to put some respect on Messi's name, like properly this time. But I'm just glad that he's showing the world like what time it is and how good of a player he is.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, like I say, I wouldn't say it's unreasonable to talk about all the success that Cristiano's had in his career, because he has been an incredibly, brilliant player and, arguably the second greatest player of all time. But, I think it goes out to Messi, that award here. And I, unlike you, hope Argentina win the World Cup, because I think he deserves it.
I think he deserves it too, but but we mentioned Cristiano Ronaldo. There's another 10 other players at the World Cup who, there's lots of players at the World Cup who potentially could get moves, but there's 10 in particular I've pointed out. We've mentioned Bellingham before and Cody Gakpo, so they bring us up to 13. But there's 10 other players that I want to talk about in terms of what they could do next.
Let's do it.
But speaking of the bench warmer, as Cristiano's new nickname. What do you think is going to happen for him now? Because honestly, the way how his international career has seemingly come to an end, because I don't think they're going to fire Fernando Santos, because he won them the Euros, he won them the what's that other tournament that FIFA made up?
Nations League.
That's it. He won that for them, right? So he's clearly a very he's a very successful manager for them.
Like winning the Audi Cup, that is.
Yeah, but they have
Tottenham's glory.
They got this. So true. But where do you see him go next? Because obviously there's talk of Saudi Arabia. I think that'll be quite premature. I do think he still has something to offer in Europe. Europa League probably is what I'd say, but he thinks Champions League, and maybe a club might go in for him. Where do you see him realistically going now for the rest of the season? Because I don't think it'll be a long-term deal. I think it'll probably be short-term. But where do you see him going?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, honestly, I look at it and I look at all them teams in the Champions League that are competing in this last, stage. Yeah, sure. The good thing about Ronaldo is that he's got that last 16 experience, and maybe for a team that's, maybe like a Napoli, for example, it could be an interesting consideration on a short term, 6-month contract, 1-year contract, but I think most look at it and think it's not worth the hassle. Like, it just brings so much more hassle than it does joy having him at your team. And I don't know why you would want that. Like, to bring in someone like Cristiano Ronaldo and make him the center of your, entire team right now. I am more inclined to think that he'll end up in Saudi Arabia where the money's at, and he'll be on a killing. Now, he may be more ambitious than that. Who knows? But it seemed like nobody wanted him in the summer. It's so...
Well, Chelsea were strongly linked.
Yeah, but at the time they had Tuchel, and Tuchel basically said no from what I heard. So would Potter be interested? Maybe. And maybe that would be something different, because it seemed like the American owner was keen on having him.
Yeah, the American owner very much wants him. In fact, that was one of his main targets, and that's part of the reason why Tuchel ended up getting let go, because they had a plan for Ronaldo and Tuchel said no. And here's why I don't want him. And they were just like, well, you're not very collaborative, and he's just like, I don't want him. And so they said, okay. And then as soon as bad results came in, bye-bye. So yeah.
Well, Chelsea could be an option. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But I wouldn't recommend it if I was Chelsea. I wouldn't be going down that path. But yeah, Chelsea could be an option.
Yeah. It's just a shame though, because even Real Madrid, Benzema's still out injured. There's a gap there. They've come out and said that they're not really looking to sign him right now. Obviously, that could just be early talk to try and maybe get his camp to lower whatever wage expectations they might have. It could be Perez just trying to gauge fan sentiment and see how they really feel. But
he's training there today.
Oh, is he?
Yep.
Well, there you go.
Yep, he's training in Madrid today.
That's how it starts. Just a little bit of training, then Carlo looks over and said, "Oh, he's still got it." Maybe he could give us 6 months of something, and then yeah. But I think that would be the best move. I mean, okay, write the script. It goes back to Real Madrid, PSG Madrid final, Champions League, Messi versus Ronaldo part 2, Modric versus Messi part 2. It's the script is there. Benzema versus Mbappe part 1. The script is there. There's something there, There's something there. That could be quite interesting. Actually, Messi beats him to the World Cup, and then Ronaldo is like, "No, you're not gonna take the Champions League from me," and then beats him again in the final. That would be sweet.
Yeah, the only thing that I would like to undermine that script is Liverpool versus Madrid part 3, because I'm ready for that one.
Yeah, that's also another option. I mean, for me personally, I want PSG to win it this season, just because I think it would just really crown off a great end for Messi in European football if he does leave, and also I think for Mbappe if he does decide that this is his last year at PSG, it'll be the fitting way to go. And I think for Neymar as well, it would finally it wouldn't help his cause, because it's like, you can't win Champions League without Messi. Well, yeah, you can't. But I don't think he'll care, because he would have finally achieved what he went there to achieve, which is winning the Champions League. So I think everyone would win in that bracket. Neymar's might not be as happy, but at the end of the day, at this point in time, I don't think he'll care. And hopefully he wouldn't. Yeah. So, I think that'll be quite a nice one. So Ronaldo, if this ever gets to your camp, Madrid, take a pay cut, do the business, come back and Champions League final and sit on the bench. But anyway, so
all right, back to your list. Let's go.
Back to my list. So next player I've got is he was plays at centre back. He was starring for Croatia up until the game against Argentina, where he got absolutely torn a new one. That's Joskov Gvardiol. He got torn a new one by Messi. I've never seen a centre back get embarrassed so badly since Jerome Boateng got torn a new one by the same player in a crucial match. It was like, oh gosh, it was embarrassing to watch. I mean, that the second goal for Alvarez, my goodness, like just how can you, like, we've seen Messi dribble past 4 players on his own. Standard. When you dribble past one guy 4 times, after the 3rd time, just beg, just fall on the ground, like fake a heart attack, I don't know, whatever it takes, just make it stop. But yeah, I think, that game was quite humbling for him, because with price that he looked like certified, big team's going to get him. That game, he made him look really, really average. Do you think that's going to affect where he might go to next? Or is that just a thing you just forget about and move on from?
Look, it's Messi. Anyone can be torn apart by Messi on any given day. Boateng was one of the best centre-backs in world football at the time, and Messi tore him apart. So, yeah, I wouldn't read too much into that one particular thing. However, I don't know that I would say he's destined to go all the way to the top. I see maybe a move to someone like Tottenham. Being
really
a potential move.
What, as his next move? I mean, I know he's linked to Bayern, Liverpool. No, it's not Liverpool. Sorry, Bayern, City, United, and Chelsea.
Maybe United will spend the money. Bayern have a habit of taking up all of the best players in the Bundesliga, so it could also be a very potential move. I think I think Spurs are interested from what I've heard. They're in the market for a centre-back, whether a centre-back that can play left-back in his case. But, they're in the market for one. And, Skriniar was, linked with them almost every window that's gone by in the last 6 or something. But yeah, I think Spurs could be a potential move, but like every other player that Spurs want to sign, they could also end up at Bayern. So,
that's true.
Nagelsmann as the manager, Sabitzer, they was linked with before he ended up at Bayern as well. So maybe really the Spurs rumours are just the path opening up for a move to Bayern Munich.
We all hope so, because, it's the history of the Tottenham. But so the next player we've got on the list is actually playing tonight. Sofiane Amrabat from Morocco, 26-year-old central mid at Fiorentina right now. He's actually linked to Liverpool, surprisingly enough. Whether there's any truth of that in those links, I don't know. He's had a really good World Cup, very combative, very energetic in the middle. Do you think Liverpool will be a level he could land at, or do you think it'll be another player that maybe needs to go to another club a bit lower down in the table? I'm not counting the table as it currently stands. I'm talking the traditional top 6. Obviously. Yeah,
look, I like what I've seen, but again, it's one of those kind of, fears for me that if he landed at a club like Liverpool, it'd be a bit too much for him. I think a club like Newcastle would be a great shout. Partly because he also isn't and doesn't seem to be too much of a diva in that sense, which fits the kind of Newcastle philosophy. Like, they seem to have a really clear idea on how they're going to go about this, the Newcastle, and I'm well convinced that Newcastle are probably going all the way to the top. It's just a matter of time. But yeah, I think Newcastle would be a good fit for someone like him.
Yeah, we're going to come back to Newcastle before the end of the podcast, because they are a hashtag problem that needs to be solved. Maybe the government can get involved to help us out there. But moving on from mentioning the useless government, we're going to talk about Enzo Fernandez starring it in midfield. I remember actually there was a massive, massive, massive appeal for him to actually get on the pitch for Argentina throughout this World Cup. Like, as games went by and he wasn't playing, it was like, start him, bring him on. And then the minute they put him in midfield, he's not left. That's his position now. He's owned it, and he looks really good. He's 21 years old, plays at Benfica, and he's definitely one that's could go anywhere really. Probably needs to refine it. He's young, so he needs to refine his game a lot. I think there's a lot of moments in the match yesterday where I just wasn't, and the previous game I wasn't really that impressed. Netherlands game, I think he just was a bit anonymous, and the last game I think just takes too many touches on the ball. It's like there's time to just speed up the tempo of passing. He just took a bit too many. He'll take 3 touches and then play a simple pass. We could have done it in 2. So that's my only thing for him. Is he a player that you think could make a move to Prem? And if the Prem, where would you drop him?
Yeah, again, I think it's kind of a Newcastle type.
Hey, we can't just use Newcastle as default options for all these players,
Every player on your list, I'm just gonna say Newcastle. But no, yeah, look, I haven't seen a lot of him play. So I've seen a few moments in this World Cup, and I haven't seen much of him in general. So it would be hard to make a very clear judgment as to where I think he'd end up. But also another. He strikes me as, and I don't know if Napoli is necessarily a massive step up from Benfica necessarily. It's a bigger league, but that could also fit that kind of model of taking a player that needs refining a little and refining them into something, and then making a killing off them moving forward. But again, I don't know how much Benfica would want for him. Again, probably depends on where he ends up going. So, that would be my thoughts on that.
And the good thing with Benfica is that they're notoriously good at selling players, so they will know how to eke out as much value from him as possible. So we'll just see how that plays out, and whether he does make that move. His teammate is another player who is definitely on this list, and he is the man who made the bench warmer continue being the bench warmer. That's of course young Gonzalo Ramos, 21-year-old striker, got a hat-trick on his first ever start, which made everyone realise how much of a liability and a hindrance Cristiano Ronaldo was to his country, which is quite a shame because we're all massive fans of him. I personally think it's probably a bit soon for Ramos to get a move, because he's only I think he just needs a lot more time to develop and refine his game. But there's definitely something there from what he showed us. Outside of Newcastle, where do you think would be a good stepping stone move for him? Because obviously he's got a big frame. He's not the quickest, but he's got decent movement off the ball. And I think his goals showed that he's got good movement off the ball. But also I think in the game that knocked them out against Morocco, his movement was lacking, which really could have, a bit more. Maybe they could have got some more out of that game.
Yeah, look, I think that, he's the type of player that maybe give him another year at Benfica and see what he does. He's obviously talented. He's been scoring a fair bit for Benfica, and now that Darwin Núñez has moved on to Liverpool, he can become the main man there. And, I think he's having a pretty good season from what I saw before the World Cup too. So I think, give him a little bit more time, but if he's going to move, anytime soon, Newcastle will be a really good shout.
We've got a couple more players on the list, but I'm going to skip most of them because we could chuck them all in Newcastle. Except for Jurriën Timber, I think he's could be in for a good shout across Europe's big teams. I think definitely could be someone that, say, a Chelsea could look at, because right now they seem to have an issue in that they don't really know what their best pairing, what their best three is at the back there. Thiago Silva always gets in for me, and then it's just who do they partner him with, and they seem to have an issue there. Like you said, Tottenham are looking for new centre-backs, so could be an option there. I'm not going to include Arsenal because I think we're looking at Evans and Dika potentially for the summer as a free transfer. So that would definitely make Arsenal's centre-back options in the back four securely locked for the next 3-4 seasons. If you're keeping Gabriel, Saliba, Ndika, and Ben White as your four options, and it's 2 from forward, and I'm happy with that. Let's go. So I'm not going to include us. Obviously, Manchester United can always do with help. They need Jesus at this point, and I'm not talking about Gabriel. And City don't really need him unless if Laporte decides to move on, which is potentially possible. But
they also signed a Kanji too.
Yeah, so they're not really kind of struggling for centre back. So that's where I'd put him. Let's talk about the other Portuguese superstar, the one that had a bit of shine this World Cup, but is stuck under the tyrant's rule, and that's João Felix, the tyrant. Because actually, I was reminded today that of 1998, the World Cup, where Golden Balls, Golden Becks was doing his, was playing really well, having a great breakout international tournament, happened to fall on the ground, be lying down, sun lounging on the pitch, and happened to just move his left leg and just lightly tap the back of Diego Simeone, who happened to roll around like he was shot. And Q, now I remembered that, and now I put him in my always hate list because that was unnecessary. But yes, Diego Simeone is the manager of João Felix, unfortunately, and João Felix needs to be set free from his prison. Where would you send him?
Well, probably nowhere, and in the consideration of the fact that to get him out of that prison would cost you a very, very big loan. So look, I think, the likelihood moves for João Felix in my eyes are PSG or Barcelona, and probably not any time in the next year or two. With Barcelona's wonderfully downing debt, but yet they still managed to spend £600 million in a summer or whatever it may be. So I think PSG would probably be a good move for him as maybe a replacement for Messi, Mbappe, kind of dynamic, and there'll be money coming PSG's way and wage bills being kind of freed up, and that would probably be the one and only place that I could see João Felix landing.
That's a good shout. I mean, there's been some tentative Twitter talk, and I stress the Twitter talk of like a potential loan option to move to Arsenal. What would you think about that from a starting point? Or is that just a complete non-entity as far as you're concerned?
See, Arsenal, look, we haven't talked much about Arsenal this year, but,
we got time.
Arsenal, we do. Arsenal are having a great season.
We're back.
and things are going well for Arsenal at the moment. And I would learn to walk before I ran when it comes down to the likes of someone like João Felix. But then I would also wary of him being a bit of a luxury player like a Metzer Ozil, and that maybe Arsenal need one or two players that are able to come into that team and give their all. Not that João Felix wouldn't give his all in that sense, but that are able to apply themselves, work hard, and kind of be one of the rest of the team. I'm not sure that move would happen. I'm not sure I'd even encourage it in Arsenal's situation at this particular stage. But at the end of the day, if that option did become available to them, he's obviously a very, very talented player.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because obviously, we've done a lot of dealings with Mendes now, and so there's clearly a line of dialogue there, and obviously he's his agent, so he could make things happen. He's also Ronaldo's agent, and I would never want that deal to happen either. But you just never know with that man. He always has his plans up his sleeve. But yeah, I think for João Felix, he's clearly just stuck. He made the wrong transfer decision in the first place. Why would you go to that club? Of any clubs, why would you go there? I don't understand that. That's his own fault, and he can suffer the consequences of being stuck under Simeone's evil rule. But yeah, I think that there's, like I said, there's other players on this list, but we'll save them for, it's not really relevant to talk about them. The only other guy maybe might be worth a conversation is Mohamed Kudus, a Ghanaian winger, plays for Ajax. In terms of the possibilities of what he could bring as a move, is he someone that you think could make the move now, or is he someone that's worth maybe just holding off for a bit, cook a bit more at Ajax before making that move rather than make a jump? I'm saying skip January and skip the summer, have another full season at Ajax before making that jump to somewhere else.
Yeah, Kudus has looked good this year, and even in the two games in which Napoli absolutely dismantled Ajax, Kudus was their bright shining light, and he looks like a player. He can play centre mid, he can play in behind the strikers. You could probably even get away with playing him in a false nine. He's a very, very talented player, and I think he'd be a perfect option for Newcastle.
Indeed. I've just seen Olivier Giroud has just missed a clear chance. I have to say this for all those people that feel like he has been underrated. Arsenal fans were a bit harsh on him. No. This is the Giroud that we all know and we grew to just get tired of. He just scored great goals. He just have amazing moments, but he just has these moments where he's having a brain fart game because he's had two good opportunities. One, he hit the outside of the post because he put too much power on it. Fair enough. Another one where he's missed an absolute sitter when the goal was gaping. He tried a first-time shot when he could have taken a touch and picked a better decision. But it's a Giroud we know and love. The Giroud we know and love. And switching over to Premier League talk, we're about 2 weeks or a week away? 2 weeks away?
However long we are to Christmas, we are to the Premier League starting.
Oh, wow, okay. So we're not far away. Not far. We're 10 days away from having the sweet relief of club football back again. We've loved the World Cup. It's been very entertaining. But to be honest with you, with how some of the refereeing decisions have gone the last couple of games, we just need to move on from this debacle that has happened in the desert. Now, I mentioned Newcastle before. To me, they are a serious problem. And I think that the traditional top four, the new top six, as they've been crowned, and the others that like to gate crash the party. I'm looking at you, Leicester and Tottenham. There's a conversation to be had about what to do about Newcastle because they have been very conservative in their spending in a way that surprised me. However, they have been very good in their spending because they've picked up some very, very good players at respectable prices relative to their age and market value. And they are actually reaping the rewards from their business. And actually, it's going to show that not only is it a well-run club, we thought it was a circus, clearly isn't, but also Eddie Howe, as a coach, it looks really, really, really good. And a conversation I was having with one of my work colleagues was about the whole Gareth Southgate situation, whether he should be kept or moved on. But again, we'll save that all for a separate podcast. But spoiler alert, moved on with swiftness. But there's an argument to be had that the FA need to find a way to convince Newcastle to allow us to have Eddie Howe on a part-time basis throughout the season and manage the national team. Otherwise, the government can get involved and Newcastle's owners will have some issues with their bank accounts getting closed down. That's just my suggestion. I'm not saying they should do that, but that's what I would do if I was in charge of this country. But yeah, so for you, how do you think like the clubs need to look at Newcastle, especially Liverpool, because obviously you're chasing them to get that spot back in the top four, among others. But I think they're probably the big club you'd want to get out of the spaces there. What do you think needs to be done about Newcastle?
I'm not sure anything can be done about Newcastle. They have a lot of spending power and, they are inevitably the next Man City. And I think it's just a matter of time. And we all just have to accept that makes the top four a lot more competitive and a lot more difficult to maintain and to keep. And there's no one, maybe other than Man City, that's an absolute guarantee, or close to what would feel like at least an absolute guarantee. But yeah. So no, I think with that, I'm slightly worried, based on our poor start to the season and based on the fact that we're chasing them. And Newcastle looked very, very good for the last 6 to 7 games before the World Cup. And I think it's inevitable they'll go through a rough patch. Most teams do, and I think come the end of the season, they'll probably be there or thereabouts, top four. But the fact that they're there this quickly is worrying. The thing about Eddie Howe and the credit I would give Eddie Howe from what I have reflected on is his ability to develop players has been second to none. Miggy Almiron was, kind of like, should we say raw? Is that a kind way of putting it?
He weren't it. I'll say it. He weren't it. He is now, but he really weren't it. Like Jack Grealish's comments were justified. It's just unprofessional, but they were justified. Like it was the classic meme of like I didn't say it in it. Like he said it. I agree with what he said, but I didn't say it. But he was right. It's so true.
You know, so I think you know, you look at him now, and he's obviously the new Mohamed Salah. So you know, what can you do? But yeah, and then the credit goes to Eddie Howe for his development on the training ground, what he's getting out of his players. I think Eddie Howe would be stupid to go to England at this particular stage, to be honest, and he should ride this wave for as long as he can ride it at Newcastle, and you know, maybe all the way into the England job after, you know, the 2024 Euros. You know,
that's what I'm saying on a part-time basis. I don't think he should leave Newcastle.
no,
I'm not
one's going to hire
I'm
the
saying
England
that.
manager on a part-time basis, Clive. It's not going to happen.
I know it's wishful thinking, but I think sometimes you gotta be flexible. Like I think Southgate's done as good as he can, but again,
Another
that's a
podcast.
podcast. That's next week's podcast. Actually, we'll make it next week's podcast. I feel like it's quite pressing, and there's lots of differing views on whether he should be kept on. But we'll make it next week's podcast about Southgate. It'll be called The Waistcoat. We'll know who it's about. But you know, you mentioned Liverpool. We'll leave Newcastle for now because that's a headache we'll deal with.
And they've had a lot of talk on this podcast. Like Newcastle are becoming the new big, you know, podcast talk.
Yeah, they have. I think mainly because I look at them, and on the one hand, I'm actually really happy that, like, you know, the early Premier League established team, right? They've gotten their shine back. Like, this is a club. They're not a small club. They're a big club, you know, relative, and they've just gone through barren years. And I'm glad that they're actually back, and they are, you know, they're doing well. It's just a case of, like, a lot of fans will look at Arsenal and say, we're glad you're doing well, just not this well. You know, like, can you not slow down? Can you get off? You can have your top four, not a title. That's how fans think about Arsenal, which is fair enough. I get that. So Newcastle's like, okay, you can have your European run, not Champions League yet. Like, give us a year to adjust. So it's kind of like that. It's like they're doing well, and I'm happy for them. But at the same time, it's like they're ahead of where I would expect them to be at this stage. Which then, if you extrapolate that out, they could easily be the next rival for Man City. Obviously, this season it's currently Arsenal, but they could easily be doing what we're doing this year, next year. And if they are, then it really throws a whole spanner in the works, because, you know, Man United, for example, will not stay a calamity forever. As much as we hope, pray and wish for that, that is not the reality. They will get it together eventually. And when they do, you know, you'd think that they would be some force to reckon with. Same with Chelsea. And you guys are going for a blip as far as I'm concerned. This is a blip. It's not a long-term projection. It's just like you're having a rough patch. But speaking of you guys, it's like our final kind of talking point. You know, we're coming back again. You've had the unfortunate news of Diaz being out, injured. I think he had surgery on his knee, or surgery on his leg, or surgery.
Yeah.
I think he had surgery. Yeah. So that is quite unfortunate. We've had the similar big loss of Gabby Jesus, and now Nketiah's going to have to show us all why he has the number 14. God help him and God help us, because Twitter is unforgiving. But, like, what do you think you need to do on the return to kind of get back where you want to be? And let's not say like challenging for the title yet, but let's say get back in the top four, solidify that. What's the aim now?
Need to win some games.
You know, what's the big aim?
You know, I know it seems so simple, but, like, you know, we drew way too many games at the start of the season, and then as the season went along, you know, we you know, look, we can talk about it all day long, but we got robbed by Arsenal, and then we beat Man City, and then we went back to back and lost twice to two teams in the relegation zone, you know, Forest and Leeds, and you know, you just can't do that if you want to finish top four. You can't have that level of inconsistency. Like, you know, last season we got 91 points, I think it was, and missed out on the title by a point, and we didn't win a game against the top six. Like, this season, you know, we've already beaten City, you know, and, you know, we ultimately have already got more points in terms of wins against the top teams this season than we had last season, but we're dropping points against Fulham, we're dropping points against Forest, we're dropping points against Leeds, we're dropping points against Everton, all teams that are basically just relegation fodder. Sorry, Everton. Teams that really we shouldn't be dropping points against. So, look, the break, I think, will have been helpful. But Liverpool need to come back and hit the ground running, and they need to get wins. They need to get results. They need to string a few together. We're 14 games into the season. We're not even halfway through the season. Yeah, I'm not worried that Liverpool won't finish top four. Where 6 points off the top four. 7 points off the top four. It's with a game in hand on both Newcastle and Tottenham. That it's very easy to believe that we'll be able to turn that round and finish in the top four. So yeah, I think we as I maybe kind of joked with you earlier, to learn to walk before you run. I think that's maybe where Liverpool are at this stage of the season. Just go out every week and get the result and, see where that leads you, rather than worrying about a title race or, whatever it may be. The other interesting dynamic is, will Liverpool see this and use this as the time to try to sign Bellingham early? And
do you think he would?
Maybe it could be on the cards. I don't know. Dortmund would be comfortable selling in January, and the price would be high, but the price is going to be higher regardless. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's talks.
I mean, if you chuck Naby Keita their way, I don't see how they would be too upset about that.
Yeah, look, I don't know, and they'd have to be big money, but yet, if Liverpool are going to do it in the summer, why not January? If they're going to spend, 100 million on Bellingham in the summer, why not spend 100 million on him in January? I think the questions lie with Dortmund. The ball's in their court. They hold all the aces, so they don't need to sell him. So it'd have to be a remarkable offer. But it also may cut out some of the competition because, come the summer, I feel like, the whole world will be trying to sign Jude Bellingham. And if we could get that done and dusted early and quickly and surprisingly, then that might be a boost. But, I'm not in the know. I don't know anything. But I'd be delighted if we could get that across the line. And for you, to round things up, do Arsenal win the title?
Yes. It's not so much just because we talk about Christmas. I think it's the fact for me, it's like getting to this point with the buffer of points we have ahead of Man City, knowing that we're not too far away from, January window. This is where I always wanted to be. The big unfortunate thing is Jesus' injury. Like, that is not gone according to plan in any way, shape or form. But it presents the opportunity for a young player who is eager to show that he's good enough to lead the line for those games. Not only that, but he believes he is, and he's learnt a lot from Jesus. So I think for me, Nketiah will do a job. I think he'll surprise people.
How long is Jesus out for?
But the bit
okay,
they haven't said, but it could be up to 3 months. But they haven't said exactly how long, which makes me think it could be on the longer side. But they are saying his recovery is going quite well. But like I said, it's January's around the corner. I also think Arsenal might do something quite interesting and go for someone like Wilfried Zaha. It's a deal that I would probably do. Because I think there's younger players. I know in Mudryk, there's a lot of talk about him. There's lots of links to people. Obviously, we mentioned Cody Gakpo, the podcast would be a good option as well. But I think Zaha would make the most amount of sense because of the price. The fact is he's a free agent in the summer. So it's not going to cost a lot to get him from Man City. He would hit the ground running straight away. There's no adaptation period needed aside from our style of football. But we wouldn't need to learn much about the league. So you don't have to worry about that. And then also, you could even put Martinelli through the middle. And then you've got for the left wing you have Martinelli /Zaha /Smith Rowe if you want to play him there. You could also still get Mudryk. You get both and say, Mudryk, we're going to give you time to settle in. We envisaged you to be next season is going to be your breakout year. We want you to kind of settle in, get used to it. Europa League is going to be your main starting games. You'll get Premier League minutes, but you're not coming. We're not going to start you. Saying that, the money we're going to pay for him, he would have to be playing a lot. But that's what I would do. Gives Jesus less pressure to come back quicker. Zaha can play through the middle as well. as he's done for City, as he's done for Palace rather. So there's a lot of benefits to it, and I think also it'll be Zaha's last chance at a big club. So I just see plenty of wins in that transfer. It makes a lot of sense. It's really weird that it's not been rumoured, which makes you think that maybe there is something going on there that it's not been rumoured. Even the way how I think the Palace chairman have talked about Wilf saying that he knows, he knows what we're about. We know what he's about. He loves the club and we love him and we love what he can do. It's almost like it's a kind of statement which says like, if he goes, we'll be upset, but we also appreciate all he's done for us. And we want him to stay, but we're not going to stop him from leaving if a good offer comes in either. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's something there.
Very good, very good. Look, I'll wrap up by saying that City are going to win the title. I feel like that's the obvious thing to say. I think fine. Arsenal will probably drop off, but they look good for top four for sure, and they're right in a title race as it stands. But I've said with Arsenal, and Arsenal, to be fair to them, I'll give them this. I said, let me see how they play against a big team. Performed well against the big teams. And then the next question will be, let's see where Arsenal are by the end of January and February, because they're usually 2 tough months for Arsenal to navigate through. So let's see where they are at the end of that. But they keep meeting every challenge. And I'll tell you one thing, I am being won over by Mickey Arteta as well. That's for sure. So there we go.
Hey, we all have been. We've all been on the fence, but he wins us over one by one. All right, this has been a pleasure. Thanks, guys, tuning in for another episode of One Kick from Glory. Like I said, next week's episode is all about the waistcoat. We've got a lot to talk about there. Should he stay? Should he go? And how would we define Southgate's legacy if it's the end? And if it does continue, what does he need to learn to improve upon for future endeavours? But that is us signing out. Have a great rest of the day, and let us know what you think about the World Cup so far and where will Ronaldo go. Till next time.